known about Andrew and Epstein? Have you asked the police to cover up for Andrew? Have you asked the police to cover up for Andrew's Charles? What do you think? Should the MPs be allowed to debate the royals in the House of Commons?
Well, hi everybody. Tom Sykes, Tim Tiemann here for the Royalist. Thanks very much, Ben, for queuing that clip up at the beginning there.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah, I asked Ben just to show it again, Tim, because I think that it's been an absolutely massive story today in the UK media, especially. Front pages of all the newspapers, still on all the news bulletins here, because they're such good questions, aren't they? I mean, they're just very valid questions.
You're absolutely right. We discussed it yesterday, didn't we? They're the questions that people, to the extent that people are interested in this, want answering, essentially, and they were made. And I've heard some sort of predictable sort of right-wing blowback on he's an ill man and how could they do that to him? And you're sort of like, well, if this family was functionally accountable, the British public wouldn't feel there wouldn't be a need to scream questions out at them on a royal walkabout. But the fact that those questions are not being answered adequately in terms of the public view, and in much of the media's view in the United Kingdom and elsewhere, I think, in the world, is reflected in the question being asked in that manner. And like you say, Tom, I think you're absolutely spot on. Those are the questions. And I'm guessing you've had a lot of the clips in Britain today. Is that what you said, basically? They've been shown a lot. Same over here, that there's just a lot of airplay on those questions, because I think those questions speak to what everyone, whether they're a media member or not, want to have answered.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's starting to feel like this is metastasizing from a problem about an individual member of the royal family to what feels a bit like an existential crisis for the whole. It feels like it's not there yet. We're not quite at the French Revolution yet, but it doesn't feel it would take too much now, does it? I mean, it's very febrile. It's very kind of, everything feels like it could quite easily take quite a serious turn for the worse. There's a great deal of focus today, not in the mainstream media, but online, of what is Edward and Sophie's rent. Apparently they're on a peppercorn rent as well. That is now coming out today. So I think that could be a huge problem. And then obviously so much of this story has become about this fetishization, really, of Andrew being at Royal Lodge. Well, I don't think anyone really would have known or particularly cared that Andrew was living at Royal Lodge had Charles not decided to make a massive meal out of it for the past 2 years and leak all these stories about how outrageous it was he was living there. And B, now that they're in this situation, it looks like that William reportedly is putting pressure on Beatrice and Eugenie to get Charles to move out, which is pretty extraordinary.
To get Andrew to move out, you mean, right? Yes. You said Charles, right? You mean Andrew? Okay, it's like Charles is being asked to leave now too. Okay.
I mean, it's pretty mad, isn't it? That William's pressuring, these two girls who are meant to be very close to him, meant to be his great friends and allies, and always being talked about, could they come back into the royal family to help share the burden and all of that. And then Emily Maitlis, basically in the newsagents, which is quite a big podcast in the UK. And Emily Maitlis, of course, was the person who originally interviewed Prince Andrew for what is commonly known as the disastrous Newsnight interview. That is the shorthand for it. Reporting that on Thursday night, when there was this big kerfuffle, that the press were briefed that Charles was going to show up at Royal Lodge. He was going to be passing traffic, filmed coming into Royal Lodge to read the riot act to Prince Andrew. And apparently before that, William spoke to Beatrice and Eugenie and said that they needed to put pressure on Andrew to move out, or else they would lose their princely titles, their princessy titles.
Gosh, Tom, did he put it as bluntly as that, as a quid pro quo, a semi sort of blackmail-y type sounding proposition? Was it really that blunt? You do this, all this happens type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, Emily Maitlis, very well thought of reporter, not particularly well thought of in Royal Lodge, perhaps, but a very highly credible reporter. Yeah, she basically said that it was put to them as a quid pro quo. Put the pressure on your father, or he's going to move out. One of my readers, Madeline Cunningham, wrote into me earlier and said, slightly confused by this. Have you mentioned in a previous post and live stream that William is planning to remove the prince and princess styling from Harry, Archie, Lilibet, Andrew, Beatrice, and Eugenie when he becomes king? So how can he use it as a threat now? Well, I suppose the short answer is that the overhaul isn't public policy. It's a rumored plan. It's being talked about behind closed doors, but it certainly hasn't been announced to the people who are going to be affected. And I suppose they might know in the ether that it's coming down the track, but as you say, this is a very direct quid pro quo blackmail. And maybe even if you want to read one step further into it, is it a possibility for Beatrice and Eugenie to keep their HRH and their princess titles if they do the right thing now for William? And this, I think, really, and Madeline, you really got me thinking, because I think that in a way is what is so interesting about this shift of power from Charles, quite a, sympathetic, some would say weak, kind of, kind, thoughtful man, to this very much more ruthless figure that is William, who looks prepared to talk straight to you and give you a straight, a straight deal, or not a deal, or a straight threat. So I think it's a fascinating development if the girls are being dragged into it as leverage, really.
That's amazing, Tom. I was just listening to one of the British discussion programs this morning, and the reporters, the reporting on that program, and I'm not sure if this is borne out in your reporting, is that backstage negotiations between Andrew and Charles, essentially, or Andrew and the palace, are ongoing, and it's kind of a sort of stalemate. He's still, it comes down to him really having this cast iron lease for Royal Lodge and then wanting him out of there. And then the question is, where does he go? And this thing that we were talking about yesterday with Andrew with us, and what a wonderful guest he was, I want to say that again, was the notion of having two properties in exchange for getting out of one is clearly not washing at all with the British public. Do we know at all at this point where negotiations, for want of a better term, are with Andrew, Charles, Andrew and the palace exactly?
Well, there's a couple of things that we do know. One is that this whole idea of giving them two properties was Charles's idea. The Yorks have made that very clear in briefings to the newspapers. They're saying, hey, we haven't demanded this. This is a complete mischaracterization. Whoever's briefed the Sun about this originally, this is one of the options that's been put on the table for us. So, back off. It's not like we're demanding two properties. I think there is a feeling that they are going to have to provide a house for Sarah Ferguson, which is going to be a huge issue, because she has not been a member of the working royal family since, I think, 1987, when she divorced Andrew. So on what grounds does this, perfectly, this lady get a free £5 million house? It's going to be a very, very, very hard sell. But at the same time, I think that the reality is, and there's a great story in the Sun today saying there are decorators at Frogmore Cottage, and we do know that Charles has always favoured Frogmore Cottage as the solution, and hasten to add that the royals' definition of a cottage is rather different to mine and your definition of a cottage, Tim. A 5-bedroom cottage with a yoga studio with a heated underfloor sounds just dandy to me.
Oh my goodness, yeah, totally. No, yeah, definitely not my, definitely not our working definition of a cottage, but
the problem is, Tim, is like, where does this go? Where does it end? Because Andrew can just say, well, wherever you move me to, they're gonna keep moaning, they're gonna keep complaining until I, cover myself in sackcloth and ashes and go and live on a homeless shelter in Windsor. I mean, it's like, where does this possibly end? Because I don't think that Frogmore Cottage seems like a remotely sensible idea. It's very close to Windsor Castle. It's still on the Windsor estate. He's still going to be around. He's still going to be showing up at church services at St. George's Chapel. He's still going to be riding his horses around Windsor Great Park. He's still going to be having his shoot at Windsor Great Park. He's still going to be having his chums to stay when he has the shooting weekends. So, I mean, to me, it seems like an absolutely crazy idea, but I understand that is the favourite at the moment.
That's so interesting. Yeah, no, well, you took the words out of my mouth there. It's interesting on 2 levels for me. One, we should explain to our watchers, our viewers and our listeners that the reason that it would seem that there is now suddenly a demand for Fergie to have her own property is that we mentioned it in one of our chats, I think towards the end of last week, but one of the mini stories that was coming out of this conflagration was that their relationship, from being allegedly the world's happiest divorced couple who like living together, this whole snowballing incident had put pressure on the relationship and they needed space away from each other in some sense. So if people are wondering, hang on, why is this even a thing? That would seem to be the basis of why Sarah Ferguson would now like, her own domestic space. The other thing coming out of what you've just said is, and again, I know that we restate it every time we talk, but it's particularly pertinent here, is that right now, correct me if I'm wrong, the public mood is like essentially the nerve of this guy. Every time another one of these leaks comes out about a second property or where are they going to move him, there's a kind of public, what on earth are they talking about? Because as one of the correspondents on the BBC said earlier in a discussion that I was listening to, there are allegations of very serious criminal wrongdoing around this, which as yet have not been officially investigated. Andrew has not cooperated with any investigations. He denies everything that has been alleged about him. But regardless of what, I don't think the British public, or indeed anyone who's interested in this, is going to be satisfied with a kind of property resolution in this. Like where Andrew ends up living is a great royal scandal tittle-tattle thing to get into. But there is a very serious, Virginia Giuffre, the trafficking of young women, Jeffrey Epstein, Andrew's connections to Jeffrey Epstein are the answers and the questions that people really have around this. So whatever the property resolution here is, I'm not sure that that's going to put the fire blanket on everything else, personally.
No, I totally agree. And I think especially if you end up in a situation, whereas our lovely Royal Monopoly graphic shows...
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Yeah.
Yes, it's brilliant. But whereas it clearly shows he's still living in this fabulous house in Windsor Great Park, in a stone's throw from Windsor Castle. So Windsor Castle is really close to Adelaide Cottage, which, as you can see, is 670 meters from Frogmore Cottage. So, I mean, he's literally on the very edge of the estate, and it just feels crazy to me. But the weird thing is, it's definitely the favourite, which I find absolutely bizarre, and that's pretty well what everyone thinks is going to happen. Okay, and that's what that's what Charles has been. That's the kite that Charles has been flying for
sure.
the last few years, I would say.
Yeah.
At this stage, it's years that they've been saying that, you know, he's going to move into Frogmore Cottage.
And so, Tom, I guess we should, seeing as it's on the screen in front of us, thank you again, Ben. We should, one of the stories from last night, which you can probably put much better than me, was the revelation on BBC Newsnight. I'm not sure if we have the clip, but about the presence of Jeffrey Epstein, previously sort of unknown or unreported or let's say unconfirmed until last night's Newsnight, at one of Prince Andrew's daughters. Was it their 18th? Was it Eugenie or Beatrice's 18th party at Royal Lodge itself? And the photograph of Ghislaine Maxwell, Jeffrey Epstein, there at that party.
So
is that right, Tom?
Yes. So we knew that they had been at the party, but the development now is that they have been at Royal Lodge because they've been able to match the geolocation. The BBC matched the geolocation of another photograph which showed them in the garden of Royal Lodge. Now, what the BBC aren't saying, but what I think is implicit in the threat to Andrew, is that part of his lease prohibits the performing of illegal acts on the premises. That is a grounds for termination of the lease. Well, if you've been hosting Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein at your house, I'd say it's not too much of a stretch to try and infer that illegal acts have been committed in the house. That's at least how I read it, because it didn't seem to me otherwise hugely worthy, or that it was a massive kind of story. And yet it appears to have been very, very pushed by the BBC. You know, and fair enough to them. I'm not suggesting they've been fed it by the palace or anything like that. You know, I'm not one of these conspiracy theorists who will tell you that the palace are endlessly, you know, doing journalist work for them. It's not. It's bloody hard to get information out of the palace.
Absolutely.
A few crumbs roll off the table. But as you know, at times, yes, when it suits them, they do brief. And they do try and put their story across. And as we saw with this thing of Emily Maitlis saying that ITN and PA News were both told to be at the gates of Royal Lodge because there was going to be parking traffic and Charles was going to be there. So, you know, you send someone down, But I definitely interpreted that picture of, oh, hang on, they were actually not just at the party in the grounds of Windsor Great Park. They were at Royal Lodge. They were staying at Royal Lodge.
That's right. They were at Royal Lodge. Yeah, and sorry, it was to be precise, it was Princess Beatrice's 18th birthday, and it was Harvey Weinstein, Jeffrey Epstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell in the photograph that the BBC showed on their Newsnight program last night.
That's a rogues gallery, isn't it? Right there. I mean my
goodness. And to add to the kind of the symbolic intrigue of at least of that is the fact it was a masked party as well.
Yes.
And this is pre-COVID, everyone. I'm talking about costume masks, not surgical. So it seems like it's been a day of kind of news stories today. What else has been percolating in the pot today?
Well, I think definitely this Emily Maitlis thing is what everybody really has been talking about. Is this pressure on Beatrice and Eugenie real? But I think what people don't want to talk about, but you will read on the Royalist and you will hear here, is this analysis of what it tells us about how William is really running the show here. You know, we saw in that statement that Andrew made, the very first statement he made 2 weeks ago, almost now, well, it'll be 2 weeks on Friday, where it said, in consultation with the king and my wider family. Well, I mean, it's not Princess Anne he's talking to, is it? It's, I mean, maybe he was, but, you know, it's not like she's got any influence. It's William who has been driving this. And, you know, Charles, I'm afraid, has handled this absolutely catastrophically. And I was talking to quite an interesting person today for a little special I'm going to be putting on the channel later, who's a guy called Grant Harold, who used to be Charles's butler from 2004 to 2007. He's an interesting character, and he has sort of good insights into, you know, if you were, that question, oh, what's he actually like? He's one of the people who can actually tell you what he's actually like. But what I was talking to him about, and as I say, I'm going to be posting this later, was how this complete collapse in discipline since Charles took over. And he said to me, that he felt that Queen Elizabeth II was the superglue that held the whole thing together and kept the show on the road. And frankly, under Charles, things have really gone from bad to worse. We had this extraordinary decision to start allowing Andrew to come back into the family. And I stand by this. Everybody keeps saying, oh, how did this happen? How did this happen? How did this happen? I honestly think if Charles hadn't kept bringing Andrew back into the family, kept putting the focus on him, kept telling him to turn up at Christmas, kept putting him in the car with William, kept telling him to turn up to the funeral, kept telling his wife to turn up at Buckingham Palace for his big cancer event. Why on earth Charles decided to do that is completely baffling to me. Why on earth Charles decided to put this story in the newspaper for 2 years, saying that Andrew had to move out of Royal Lodge, that it was a disgrace, that it was the siege of Royal Lodge, and that he was going to cut his electricity off, and all these kind of mad stories. Genuinely, Tim, I don't think that 3 years ago, I don't think that 95% of the people on the planet, let alone in England, had any idea what Royal Lodge was, what it looked like, what size it was, who lived there, whatever. Now, I'm not saying that it's right or wrong that Andrew lives there. That's a matter of your opinion. As you say, it's actually a very small part of the story when you consider that a person has died here. Virginia Giuffre has died. The fact of where Andrew lives is in many ways a very useful cipher or thing for us to focus on, or a distraction, whatever you want to call it. But I'm just saying, strategically, this has been handled catastrophically from day one by Charles. And I get the impression that William has had enough, and he is now taking control of the situation. And whether it's fair means or foul, whether it's, if I have to use Beatrice and Eugenie, I will use Beatrice and Eugenie. But you have to get out of that house. And I think that possibly the one thing that might get Andrew to move is the possibility that those two girls could be allowed to keep their titles and keep their HRHs and remain. They have actually kind of got 1 foot in and 1 foot out. They've got their private lives. They don't have police protection. They can go on as many holidays as they like without being given a hard time by the Daily Mail. But they are also, they're part of the broader family. They turn up at the walk to church. They're at the garden parties. They're part of the whole thing. So they've kind of done it, right? They've kind of got the half in, half out that Harry so much wanted and wasn't allowed to have. And I think that William, because really there's nothing you can do about Andrew, right? He has a cast iron lease. He's giving up 50 million quid. Why is he going to give up 50 million quid just to, when everyone thinks he's a complete whatever anyway? Why is he going to do that? The only thing I think that could get him to do it would be for his children.
That's fascinating. One of the questions you just asked there, and I think you answered it yourself kind of eloquently last week when we were chatting, was the question around Charles's behaviour. So if we go back to that sort of the heartland question of what you were saying a few seconds ago, why has Charles got this so, in your words, catastrophically wrong, brackets, so far? Do you think, Tom, that one of the reasons, and again, I'm going to play amateur shrink here and you can shoot me down in flames, but I think it reflects on something that you were talking about last week. Did I ask the question last week and you answered it as eloquently as I'm going to repeat back to you? Is one of the issues that whatever instinct Charles might have to bring down the iron rod, as William, as you say, now seems to be taking up, is one of the things stopping him some kind of duty of care or some kind of split priority when it comes to Andrew, i.e. his instinct may be to go hard or to be stern or to kind of do something doctrinaire and do something, you know, entirely instrumental and tough. But somewhere in the back of his mind is a sort of, he's my younger brother, we're all family. Queen Elizabeth would have wanted this done a certain way, or would have wanted an element of protection or cushioning extended here. And so in some ways, is Charles's response to Andrew in some way, in and of itself, neutering, i.e. once he does one thing, his other side of him goes, oh no, actually that's too much, whether that's being too soft or being too hard. And the reasons for that are rooted in familial past, senses of responsibility, senses of what his mother may have wanted, senses that at the end of a very long day, this is the royal family, and somehow I want to keep this edifice upright, and however many fudges I have to do to achieve that, I'm going to have to do. Does that make any sense, Tom?
I think it's very much what the spin from the palace has been throughout this, is that Charles is trying to honor the wishes of his mother, right? And that his mother wouldn't have wanted him to throw Andrew out into the cold. His mother, indeed the phrase duty of care has been used in some of the briefings from the palace in the discussion about this issue. That he has a residual duty of care, I think was how it was put. And that is certainly the impression. And it's something that, as we've seen, the King's office flirted this weekend. I'm glad to say that it doesn't seem to have gone any further. Flirted with trying to pin it all on Queen Elizabeth at the weekend in the Sunday Times, which I felt was an incredibly tasteless, and strategically unwise move as well. I think that actually the reason why Charles has been so keen and forgiving towards Andrew is, it's kind of like his own vanity. It's kind of like, I almost think it's like Charles is thinking of what he's going to be, what's going to be the word that comes after him. Charles the X, Charles the Y, whatever it is. And I think that he wanted to be seen as Charles the Generous, or Charles the Merciful, or Charles the Convener. And I think that was the initial impetus. So it was, I'm going to come to the throne, I'm going to be above the fray, I'm going to be this grand presence for healing and goodwill and Christianity and all men, and I'm going to pray with the Pope, and I'm going to be the defender of all faiths, and I'm going to be all these kinds of different wonderful things to all men. And I think that then what happened was, of course, the cancer diagnosis. And I think that changed everything, because it just sucked up so much energy, and it sucked up so much of their efforts trying to manage their way around it, which, to be fair, as I've said, like the King has done in terms of his public appearance and in terms of his public image and in terms of his, I'm the king and I'm going to carry on being the king until the day I drop dead. He has done absolutely brilliantly. You cannot fault him. But the reality is that if you or I were as ill as he is, our doctors, and we had a brother like Prince Andrew who was pulling the kind of stuff on us that Prince Andrew was pulling on us, our doctors would contact our families and they'd say, do you know what? I think it's best that he's not around that guy. I don't think that is what would happen. And I think that Charles has basically allowed his own grandeur and his own sense of himself and all of these things to run away with himself. And then he's found it run very hard, smack bang into the reality of a cancer diagnosis is what I actually think.
And I mean, which in any circumstance is a very tough thing. And we don't know the scale and nature of his illness. The palace have been incredibly discreet and private about it. So whatever he is going through, it's clearly a long-term situation, and whatever treatment he's having is an ongoing treatment. Tom, we could talk about Andrew all day, but you've got. I know that you've got a whole bunch of. Believe it or not, everyone, other royals are doing other things, and I know that it won't come as any surprise to you for Tom and me to reveal, for Tom and I to reveal, I should say, who those royals who might be just saying, "Hey, Spotlight, look over here. We're over here too." So Tom, today, Meghan is back in the spotlight. One of these sort of the scoops that you wrote about earlier, one of the big stories, isn't what she's publicizing today. This is a fascinating story you wrote earlier on. That again, something coming out of one of the chats we were having late last week around the showing of the children and how private and how discreet Meghan and Prince Harry still wanted to keep literally the faces of little Archie and little Lilibet from the public gaze. And something happened around this, Tom, recently. Either a mistake was made or a revelation was made, but then very quickly tidied up. What happened?
So essentially what happened was that in the Halloween video that we actually showed the other day on here, what we showed was a truncated version of that video. A fuller version of the video was posted before that, in which their faces could be, Archie's face was very clear. Lilibet's face was quite blurred, to be fair. But it was really interesting. Now, I hasten to add, I've contacted Harry's people, and they have said that it was a mistake that the children's faces were included. That, of course, that hasn't done much to persuade the cynics who think that it was done deliberately to hype up interest in the post and to generate clicks. I have to say, I'm more inclined to believe in cock up than conspiracy whenever these things happen. So basically they posted the video of them in the pumpkin patch, and there was this glimpse where Harry's carving a pumpkin, and it's all sped up that we didn't see when we did it because it had been scrubbed by then. And in that, you just see Archie's face. And I have to say, like keep saying, you know, of course, our brains fill in the blanks. So by seeing all these different glimpses of the children from the side and the top and this and the hair over here and the back and the side, I sort of felt like I knew pretty well what they looked like. And so it was no great surprise to me to see to finally see Archie's face, which, you know, just looked like a lovely, you know, nice little six-year-old boy. But so it was, I think for me, it's a bigger question about, if you don't want your children to be the focus of media speculation, why are you putting them in your social media videos? And I know lots of people do it. I know lots of Americans do it. I know lots of private people do it. But it's very different doing it when you're a private person or what have you, and you've got 2,000 followers on your or 300 followers on your Instagram account, and doing it when you've got 14 million followers on your Instagram account. And I'm sorry, but I remain firmly of the opinion that they are using interest in the children to drive traffic to their social media accounts. I mean, there's plenty of apps. I mean, there's a really good one that a lot of my family use called Back Then for their kids, where you can put it in that, it's locked, you know, it's quite complex to get the access. And they, you know, a lot of people do not put any photographs of their children on social media. I find the whole thing deeply, I just find it deeply hypocritical, because it's like, on the one hand, you're saying our children are so precious that we are going to protect their identities from you awful people in the media who want to put their faces all over your newspapers to sell copies of your newspapers. And at the same time, you're putting the children there. So
Yeah.
this is the scrubbed version. We're not going to show the unscrubbed one, although I think we do have a download of it. And you can see, you know, like, so just after this, do you remember when we were playing it, you went, oh, it seems very short.
Yeah. Oh, it carries on.
Yeah. So in the original one, carried on for like a good the same amount again. But, you know, look, one publicist said to me, it's all a bit too convenient. The kid gets attention, the internet explodes. Suddenly, Meghan's brand rollout is on everyone's radar.
Yeah. I mean, it's a strange strategy for people who are so fervent about their privacy and have ongoing, you know, legal disputes and just generally being in the public square talking about these sorts of issues, I think very eloquently and in some cases very persuasively, and then releasing a video like this, which, like you say, Tom, sort of plays with that issue of identity and revelation of identity in a very particular way. They might say, again, you know, just as I have to say that Andrew denies all the accusations, we must always say that made against him. If I'm playing the devil's advocate here, they have 2 children. They are famous people. They are on Instagram, like many other famous people on Instagram in the final weeks of October. One way to market yourself as a family unit is to shoot a video down at the pumpkin patch, and it all being very cutesy and lovely. And so in some ways, for me, it's another example of rich people using social media in the way that rich, famous people use social media. You're quite right to give me an eye roll and say, yeah, Tim, but not all of those rich, famous people have legendary and long-running beef around the issue of privacy in their family with the media complex. And you'd be absolutely right to roll your eyes at me in that respect. I'm just trying to, again, as ever, sort of map a psychological kind of reason for it to kind of ward off an accusation of hypocrisy in their eyes. It's kind of, Tom, I've got to ask, just from a purely kind of like, say what point of view, I mean, you said Archie, look, in the glimpse of whatever face we saw, we only saw Archie, not Lilibet's face, is that right?
So you do see Lilibet's face, but it's really very blurry. I mean, it wouldn't tell you any. I mean, if you were going to blur out someone's face, and if you were going to show their face and blur it out, that's what you do. Just because it's so far away. And
does Archie look like his mum,
like
his dad?
Cute little kid, you know. He looks like a cute little kid with the beautiful chestnut red hair that you could see in that other video, and you know, looks like a gorgeous little happy little kid. But I mean, he looks exactly like what you'd expect. He looks like a cross between Harry and Meghan, and you know, you can see both of them in him, and it's, you know, and in the end of the day, I'm a bit like, what's the big deal, guys? Why are you making this massive deal about, why are you selling us their faces by the inch? You know, that's what I feel like. I feel like I'm being sold their faces by the centimeter, and I just feel like it's a bit,
it's a bit of an odd game of peekaboo.
To me, to this whole authenticity thing, you know, like, it just feels really inauthentic, and it just feels really like, you know, I mean, like, look, at the end of the day, I understand the argument that privacy is about owning and taking control of your own image and disseminating it in the way that you want it disseminated, not the way that other people want it disseminated, right? I totally get that. I totally get that Meghan feels that she, you know, as a member of the royal family, had her identity and her children's identity ripped away from her and kind of ruthlessly laid out like it was in a butcher's shop for sale in the tabloid media, right? I get that, but they are never ever going to be able to square that circle for those of us like me who feel it's a bit of a paradox.
Well, to go back to what you were just saying a few minutes ago, this all, for the cynics who were saying that you were just quoting, saying this is in some way connected to her next product launch. Well, funny you should mention it, because as we were saying earlier, I think either yesterday or maybe it was on Friday, for the last few days on Instagram, on Meghan's Instagram, she's been saying that today, October the 28th, midday Eastern time, so 4 p.m. British time. This is, by the way, just 1 week this year where the two countries, the US and UK, are 4 hours apart, not 5. America will
It
put its
plays
own
it
box back
it
this country.
fries our for those of us who work between America and the UK. It's amazing how badly it completely fries our brains. The other way, it
Only for
goes for
1
like
week.
6 weeks.
It
Is
does.
it
It
only
goes.
1 week? Are you changing this week?
Yeah, no. This week. It's going to be 1 week of difference, and we're back to 5 hours as of Sunday. But
Right.
you're right, Tom. Earlier, the other clock change
Oh my God.
earlier in the
Went
year
on
is
for a
that
month.
it does. It goes on for a long period of time. Anyway, so today at that appointed hour on Instagram,
Whenever that hour was, we're not entirely sure, but at that appointed hour.
at the appointed hour, 12 o'clock Eastern time, 4 p.m. British time for this week only. The video came. Do we have it? Do we have the reel or not? Don't worry if we don't. It's completely fine.
Do you know, I don't think we do.
No worries.
We're slightly nervous of the copyright on all Meghan
Cool.
stuff.
Well, we
because
can.
it all has funny music.
We can describe it. So basically, Tom was absolutely right when he said, when we were discussing this late last week, maybe a seasonal special of her product line being launched. And indeed, that's exactly what it was, with a real heavy emphasis on honey, as far as I could make out. And
Which she doesn't like.
Yeah, as I know, right? As well as other preserves. So lots of preserves and honey. Tom, what else did you see in the video when you watched it?
Well, I actually got the newsletter from Meghan, which because I'm obviously signed up to everything that Meghan does. So I got her newsletter, and I have to say, I thought that the opening paragraph was a vintage Meghan word salad, which I would like to read to you, if I may.
Okay, all right.
Because I think it's really. If as ever, and that's a very bad way to start. Putting if and as together is a really bad start. Just as an editor, Tim, I think you appreciate.
No, it's true, but I'm also looking at the sky because I'm like, hang on, I've done that a few times. Anyway, sorry, carry on. Yeah, absolutely.
If as ever has a holiday season, it officially starts now. From the moment the first fall apple is ready to pick till we're clinking glasses to ring in the new year, we're happily wrapped up in a beautifully busy world of hosting, gathering, and gifting. I mean, yeah, okay, in a way I love it, but also it's funny when you sort of dig into it, it feels very like ChatGPT generated AI slop, because it's like, I mean, I know there's always arguments about this, but doesn't winter start on the 1st of November? I mean, it's not whatever is happening on the 28th of October, it's not the first fall apple.
No, it's not. But
if anything, it's a very late fall apple.
But Halloween, you're going to hate me here, but Halloween does begin the slalom into holiday. Like we go from Halloween to just general holiday season. I mean, we've got Thanksgiving over here in America in a few weeks. So maybe she means this is the moment that you can chart the kind of descent. I mean, the video itself is candles, and she's wrapping gifts and doing her calligraphy things, and she's making things nice, right? There's candles and there's a mantelpiece.
Hang on, breaking news. I think we've got the video.
All right.
Ben very cleverly muted the sound so we don't get nailed for the copyright.
Okay.
Right. Can we play it, Ben?
Let's go.
Apples.
Where are these apples? Jam. Honey on chicken, I think. Honey. Candles. Boxes. Ribbon. Candles. Long match. Candles. Calligraphy. Azabar.
Brilliant. Oh my goodness. It's kind of vintage Meghan, isn't it? And it's kind of, I mean, I'm sure some fashionista will be watching. We need Plum to be watching, and she could instantly tell us what that very expensive looking outfit she's wearing.
It was very expensive winter season chic. It looked so cozy. It was, but very expensively cozy. So we should explain who Plum is if people don't know who you're talking.
Plum's my sister, Plum Sykes, fashion journalist. I mean, the one thing I am going to say about that outfit,
that basket. Oh my god!
Yeah,
that is so.
I mean,
swanky.
The basket's amazing. The baskets must be like $300 from Dalesford.
You would not.
The jam looks average, I have to say.
Also, you don't pour jam into a massive. At least Shay Tiemann, you'd never pour jam into a glass
secondary jam, a secondary jam decanter.
You stick a buttery knife in it, and then when you open the jam up later, there's bits of butter still floating in it. I mean, that's
Now,
that's
Ben, get ready to freeze on her outfit.
okay.
Get ready. Okay,
yes.
freeze.
Beautiful.
Now, okay, go on a few more frames where she's standing up and we see the whole thing. I mean, it is amazing.
Look at those ribbons.
And it's definitely worth at least $7,000, if not 17,000. I mean, I don't know.
We are such Christmas hosting failures compared to this. No, I mean, we're such failures. Like, what's the point even? Like, she's even got branches hanging over the mantelpiece. I mean, okay, we'll never do it.
Also blows out the match in a very stylish way. Can you just go forward frame by frame, Ben? I just want to see her blow out the match. Look at that. I mean,
gorgeous.
Yeah.
Oh,
we can aspire, and we can all try and elevate the everyday and raise the everyday. So there we are.
So I don't know. Maybe the viewers could tell us which bits of the video are they going to try and emulate this Christmas. Now that the standard has been set, the bar has been set by the Queen of hosting. Like, what are you going to do? How are you going to match it? Are you going to be emptying jam into massive glass decanters? Are you going to be? You've got the branches on the mantelpiece. You're going to be blowing candles out like you're in a Disney movie. Like, what's up? How are you going to do it? The challenge has been set. America, Britain.
But that wasn't all Meghan was up to today, because she also had a story in a magazine that you're familiar with, Town and Country.
Oh, yes. So we should explain actually that it's the Town and Country today. Is the Town and Country Philanthropy Summit here in New York City, and so I write for Town and Country, and Tom has contributed to the cover story that we just did for October's issue on Meiko Komuro, the former Japanese princess who came here to America to live extremely quietly. But today in New York, the November issue of Town and Country went public today, and every November it's based around this amazing event that they do in Midtown around philanthropy, and it's all-star. And Meghan is included in this particular issue, Tom, because I think she's been doing.
Is that Princess Meiko who you wrote about, Tim?
Oh, thanks, Ben. Yes, that's Princess Meiko. Lovely shot of her. Thank you, Ben.
And it's a brilliant story actually that Tim did about this Japanese princess who basically left the Japanese royal family and just moved to New York and does her shopping in Whole Foods and just lives very quietly.
Almost anonymously in the world's most photographed and hyped up city. So it's quite an astonishing achievement, especially when compared to the examples of other royals. But Tom, you're absolutely right. So in this issue, in the philanthropy issue, the November issue of Town and Country, Meghan has done what has she been interviewing or talking to some fire-related heroes?
Yeah. So as you might remember, Meghan got a bit of stick at the time of the California fires. She was called basically disaster tourist by a famous actor whose name currently escapes me. So she has done an interview. She's credited with the byline, but actually it's a Q&A.
Yeah.
And she's done an interview with these very cool chicks who run this thing called the Altadena Girls Instagram account, which is basically for young women who were affected by the LA fires at the beginning of the year. And it's actually really cool. And I really enjoyed the interview. I really enjoyed the interview, and I really enjoyed reading about them. And they're brilliant, and they've just set up a support group to kind of help each other. And initially it started as like, we need some water, and then it kind of morphed into more fun things like sort of beauty products and things like this. And ultimately it's about a community. And it's something wonderful, very close to Meghan's heart, and absolutely. I think kind of actually, dare I say it, a really good PR move by her and her team. And that's exactly the kind of stuff, that she should be doing, is putting the spotlight on groups like this, So I thought it was
wonderful.
really good. I thought it was really good.
It's a really
And
valuable
now,
initiative. Yeah.
Tim, I hate to tell you this, but we have a very exciting announcement to make about our dear contributor and friend, Tim
no.
Tiemann.
This is where the
We
hood
have
comes
got
up.
something
This is
very
where the hood,
exciting to tell you.
where the hood
Are we
comes up.
ready, Ben? Congratulations, Tim, on being nominated for
Cheers.
7 awards. He's been nominated. He hasn't won them yet, but
No, he
ticker
hasn't.
tape parade.
Look at that. Oh my goodness.
So
It's raining.
Tim's been
It's raining down
nominated.
here in New York. Oh my goodness, it's all coming down on me here in New York. It's actually happening in real time. Yeah. Thank you so much, Ben, and thank you so much, Tom. Yes, that's all true. That caption is true. Somehow it's true. I don't know how it's true, but it's true. There you go.
Absolutely fantastic, and we're so delighted.
I got my voting. I got my voting sticker on here as well.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely brilliant. So 7 awards, including Journalist of the Year, and that was connected to the Princess Mako piece.
No, not Princess Mako. It was connected to the Journalist of the Year piece and Theatre Critic and stuff. But 5 awards were attached to the Daily Beast, and then one is attached to Town and Country, and that was the Michael and Isabella Strahan profile about some of our. He's probably not too well known in Britain, but over here, Michael Strahan is a big TV anchor on ABC Good Morning America, and his daughter had a terrible sort of situation with a sort of brush with a life imperiling condition, which she came through, and I spoke to them after she sort of completed one of her final rounds of treatment for it, and it was a love. I don't know if you've ever kind of interviewed a father and a daughter together at a moment like that, but it was incredibly moving, and they were just incredibly lovely, and obviously they are very well off, and they're famous and everything, but when people go through something like that and then sort of tell you the story of what that was like to go through as a family, that's what that piece was about.
Yeah. Well, congratulations, Tim. The congratulations are pouring in on the
thank you
comment section.
Thank you, everyone.
From your fans. So we've always been thrilled to have Tim here as my co-host at the Royalist, and it's absolutely he's just a brilliant journalist, as you can tell just from him chatting to me. Tim just has this ability to ask the right question. You saw it the other day with Andrew Loney, when Tim essentially ran a lot of that interview.
No, I didn't.
And rightly so. And the questions you were asking, Andrew, was so good, and we got so much out of him actually that he hadn't said to other people, and he actually really enjoyed the interview, and I know that our viewers and listeners really enjoyed it as well. And so
I
Tim,
I think
a wordsmith. I want to endorse that comment. You are a wordsmith, and it's fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So congratulations, Tim.
Thank you so much, Tom, and thanks to Ben as well, and thanks to everyone who's watching and listening and sending nice comments. Journalists aren't used to nice comments most of the time, so for brief times where we get nice comments, we will take all of them, and I will head out into the afternoon sunshine with a smile on my face. In terms of the questions that I do ask of people, whether it's this particular subject area that Tom and I are talking about, and Tom does the same. I mean, Tom and I would always talk about this. We try and think, if people are interested in the subject that we're talking about, whether it's the royal family or some of the subjects that have been nominated for these awards, I try and think about what the reader at home or somebody who doesn't have a microphone, if they're interested in that subject, really wants to know. And it might not be what everyone in the media is talking about, but Tom and I might talk about it as almost like, having some toast at home for breakfast or something like that. Is that the same for you, Tom?
Yeah, absolutely. Tim, listen, it's been brilliant to be here today. That's more or less all we've got time for this evening.
Should we cast forward a bit? And Tom, are we expecting anything? Is anything bubbling under that you've got your eye on into tomorrow, especially around Andrew, Charles, and the continuing saga, or are things in in a slight becalmed state, or not at all becalmed?
No, I don't think they are becalmed. I mean, I think behind the scenes, it's absolutely furious negotiation. Okay. I mean, there is even a rumor going round that Andrew's stirring the pot a bit, and apparently fleetingly asked for Anne Mahal, which is William and Kate's home in Sandringham. So I think that I think whether or not there's going to be any developments, I don't know. But I do know that everybody is very, very, very focused on trying to find some kind of endpoint and resolution to this. I think what they're incredibly nervous about, obviously, is getting to an endpoint that isn't an endpoint that just makes it worse. So I think that it's interesting to look at the two houses story that came out earlier as a little test of the water. Is it going to be feasible to give Sarah Ferguson her own house? Or, you know, more to the point, are we being softened up for the fact that Sarah Ferguson is going to have to be given a house somewhere? Because, I mean, realistically, she has been living in Royal Lodge for like 30 years. Mm-hmm. And you can argue whether that's right or wrong, but, you know, we sort of have to deal with the world as we find it rather than we want it to be sometimes. And I think that there is a sense that Sarah Ferguson does need to be given a house live, or else she will need to make money. And the risk, of course, of that she's involved in the publishing world. She's great friends with Oprah. You know, a phone call to Oprah, and she could have a couple of $1 million, right? So that cannot be allowed to happen. And I think that William is taking charge of these negotiations, and I think he's going to make sure that a resolution is reached that everybody can live with. And in a way, I suppose it's quite convenient for William, because it can all basically be blamed on King Charles. And as you know, and as people who watch this know, I think that King Charles, I think that's not an entirely unfair settlement if King Charles does get blamed for it, because I think it's all his fault, frankly. And I think he's handled it very, very badly. And I think that in terms of what's going to happen tomorrow, I've sort of slightly given up trying to forecast it. I know. But it seems like, what I can tell you right now, Frogmore Cottage is the favourite. And as for Sarah Ferguson, one doesn't quite know. But I suspect that giving a second house is probably off the cards. But there's certainly no reason why a private financial settlement can be made.
That's completely fascinating. Well, let's see what happens.
Yeah, and a good point there. Someone just saying Anne Mahal is not a Crown Estate property. It's true. Sandringham is privately owned by the monarch, but I am told that Anne Mahal is actually owned by the monarch and is again on one of these lease loans to the to Princess of Wales. I don't believe it's actually owned outright by them, because it is within the compass of the estate. So it wouldn't have been given away, like the deeds and stuff wouldn't have been given away. But I think that sorry, I know we're going over now at 9 o'clock and we've got to let people get off, but I do think that the next few days are absolutely critical of how this is handled. I think if it's handled wrongly, this could escalate very quickly into, you know, a French Revolution situation where the monarchy ends up people calling for the abolition of the monarchy. Look, when Queen Elizabeth died, and in the years before she died, support for the monarchy was consistently well over 70, even 73, 74. I don't think it ever quite got 75%, but, you know, it was unbelievably high in the United Kingdom. It's now down to about 54, 55. And at that kind of level, it starts to get really, really dangerous for them. So I think they need to think very, very carefully about what they do. I think Charles needs to think very carefully about how to answer those questions that were put by that heckler outside Lichfield Cathedral. And I think they need to come up with some compelling, convincing and credible answers to those questions, or I think they could be storing up a lot of trouble for the years ahead.
It's so funny, Tom. You know, we'll go back to that heckler where we began this broadcast this afternoon and this evening where you are. you know, if, PR training and PR crisis training at its sharpest can often include role play in a room where the subject who is taking the training might usefully be confronted by a set of questions like that, or those questions could be used as a kind of model, essentially, in crisis sort of PR. And I just suddenly had this thought that however uncomfortable or whatever that made the royals and made Charles in that moment, actually a sensible, good spin doctor or a good practitioner of PR would take those questions and somehow distill them into the most useful, holistic and illuminating training exercise for either the royals, their handlers, or both, essentially, in the coming days, because those questions, as raw and as confronting as they are the questions. And getting answers to those questions together, and credible answers, authoritative answers, and answers that will satisfy the public, one might consider that to be a priority in some way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tim, thank you so much. Ben, our producer, are you going to play us out with some music, or are we just going to press the button? There we go.
There we go.
Goodbye. Goodbye,
Bye,
everybody. Press the